Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I have a thing with three, so I had to say that 3 times. So before I start, I just want to explain one thing. If it looks like I'm laughing at you, I probably am because I'm used to talking to 9-year-olds. So I told myself that if I got nervous, just imagine an audience full of 9-year-olds. So anyway, my name is Leshell Hatley, and I am extremely excited to be standing before the CreativeMornings DC audience. Your reputation certainly precedes you. Congratulations for making it within that 10-minute registration window to successfully reserve a seat for this morning's talk. So give yourselves a round of applause. I can only hope that I impress you as much as that registration process impressed me. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Joe and the rest of the CreativeMornings DC team for their patience and working with me to get us all here. I totally appreciate the opportunity. I'd also like to thank my friends and family who constantly encouraged me as I was preparing for this talk. And I'd like to thank my students as well, because without them, I would, of course, not be here before you. So I'm here to speak to you about robots. The plan is to share a bit about how I started teaching robotics. Well, actually, no. The plan is to share a bit about robotics in general, tell you how I started teaching robots in the first place, and then describes a few gems that I have acquired teaching and learning robotics with youth in the DC area. I'll end with a very special invitation for all of you to get involved in what's coming up next. So teaching and learning. That's an interesting idea, especially with youth involved. But let me share what a robot is before we get into all that. According to James Wilson of the Harvard Business Review, finding an all-encompassing definition of robot is a very difficult problem, even for the world's experts. There are many factors to consider: the robot's form, its purpose, and even its level of intelligence. Wilson cites that the word robot has had many different definitions since the early 1800s. Forced laborer is one of them. In 1920, a Czech author wrote a play called Rossum's Universal Robots, where artificial people, robots, were mass-produced in a factory from synthetic materials. This introduced the word robot into science fiction. These robots seemed happy to work for people and their families, and all seemed well. But that all changed when a hostile rebellion leads to the extinction of the human race. Yep, now you know where that storyline comes from. Outside the world of fantasy, art, and plays, the International Federation of Robotics defines a robot as, and we can all read this, right? Let's read it together. Come on, no, seriously. Ready? On the count of 3. 1, read it slow. 1, 2, 3. An automatically controlled And that definition actually continues. It's complicated. By 1973, however, there were 3,000 industrial robots in operation. By 2003, there were 800,000. Today, there are about 1.3 million industrial robots in the automotive, electronics, food and beverage, and other industries. Service robots, on the other hand, interact with humans more than their industrial counterparts. They're in people's personal and professional settings, like in operating rooms, educational settings, in the ocean, in space, etc. Cognitive robots are the newest on the scene. These are software-based robots that function on websites like Twitter, telling us what's trending for the instant or controlling autocorrection on our smartphones, and they may even help with cybersecurity. I must say, some of my students would even probably add Phyto Robot to these categorizations. I have no idea, but it never fails. There are two questions my students always ask me. One, do we get to keep the robots? And two, are we going to make them fight? I don't get it, but it never fails. But there is another kind of robot that my experience makes me put in another category. That is the Lego Mindstorm kits. These are kits Uplift, my organization, uses to teach robotics, and they come from another beast altogether. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind. Sometime back in 2009, word started spreading around DC that there was this awesome African-American female engineer and computer scientist who was amazing to work with and was a great teacher. The buzz about her included that she was a certified teacher and she provided customized computer curriculum for youth in various educational settings. I was in huge demand. That year, KIPP DC, AIM Academy in Southeast DC, was one of the first schools to ask me to participate in one of their career days. I did. Not soon after the day began, school administrators witnessed how I interacted with the students and immediately asked if I would consider teaching Saturday school. So for those of you who don't know, for most charter schools in DC and even around the country, Saturday school is held on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, and Saturday school is designed to provide students with enriched classes in the arts, languages, and any other topic they don't get exposed to during their regular day. If a student spends his or her entire school career going to Saturday school, the hours spent can amount to a 13th year of school. So you can imagine the benefit there. But anyway, back to the talk, right? By this time in 2009, having taught for about 10 years, my instructional forte had expanded, and of course, I welcomed the invitation to teach Saturday school. So I enthusiastically provided AIM Academy with a list of 9 topics that could be taught. Ms. Renix, the head of Saturday school at the time, selected robotics. First time I'd ever even heard anybody select that at the time. This launched the beginning of one of Uplift's programs called Robotics in DC, and I've been teaching robotics ever since. But this is where the talk gets interesting. This first robotics class was more learning than teaching for everyone, me and the students. It was a doozy. Let me attempt to place you in our shoes during one of those initial robotics classes. It was the 3rd day of class, I'd say, and I was so excited. I was able to get 13 Lego kits donated that first year. A huge shout out and thank you to Software Theoretic for making this happen. I walk into the classroom with box after box of Lego Mindstorm kits pouring in with me. I place them on the tables, and about 20 students are zooming in closer. They're so excited by the robots they see on the cover that by this time I swear I see some of them drooling. As we proceed to open the boxes, however, everyone could instead see individual bags neatly organized in gray, yellow, red, and black Lego pieces. There were a little over 700 pieces in each box, and they were not put together. The pictures on the boxes are at this point extremely misleading to the students, and to my surprise, they begin to slowly zoom out, stepping away from the table. Seriously, they literally backed up. It was intriguing to watch. Think about it. This is a totally different experience from those that college students or professionals have. They're simply applying mathematics, programming, and engineering concepts that they already know to produce, test, and research robotic behavior and artificial intelligence. This Lego Mindstorm newbie experience is totally different. Students are learning everything at once. Imagine it. Students are in elementary or middle school, probably haven't taken any advanced mathematics classes yet, never heard of programming or what it means, and it's probably very likely that they've never put a complete Lego set together ever in their lives. This is a true statement. I've heard that several times. Yet, they're now expected to combine these 700 plus pieces to create movable parts. They're hearing words like gears, pulleys, levers, inclined planes, sensors, mechanics, simple machines, complex machines, and more for the first time, and have to learn how to build and apply them. The provided instructions have no words, only pictures. That's my friend who went through this as well, so she understands. And they're forced to make these two-dimensional pictures on the page into a three-dimensional form that can move across the room, push, pull, and pick up other objects. And that's just building the robot. Next, they have to attempt to program a series of commands to control and manipulate those movable parts they just constructed with what looks like puzzle pieces on the computer screen. Again, no words for instruction, just funny-looking pictures that they drag across the screen and snap together to form commands. Believe me, this is not the first introduction to robot this is not the first introduction like writing the hello world code one creates when testing and learning a new programming language. Instead, students are already using both sides of their brain. Every ounce of everything they've ever learned about how things worked, and even some elements they made up just to see what happens. Can you imagine the discomfort, the frustration, and maybe even the desire to quit that these students may feel? And these feelings don't really let up, even after students are a bit more experienced. So I found a poem that kind of reminds me of what they might be feeling. It's called My Robot's Misbehaving by Ken Nesbitt. You can read along with me. My robot's misbehaving. It won't do as I say. It won't dust the furniture or put my toys away. My robot never helps me with homework or my chores. It doesn't do my laundry and neglects to clean my floors. It claims it can't cook dinner. It never makes my bed. No matter what I ask of it, it simply shakes its head. My robot must be broken. I'll need to get another. Until that day, I have to say, I'm glad I have my mother. So I certainly heard this resulting frustration all too often in class. Miss Leshell, my robot isn't working. That still echoes in my sleep sometimes. Here's where my learning began, though. Hearing and seeing this frustration for the first time, I knew I had to figure out a way to keep students engaged. So no, I'm not their mother, but as a dedicated robotics instructor and someone who genuinely cares about them, I had to find ways to provide that same expected level of support. From the first day watching students back away from that table, I had to find a way to make them think that getting their robot to work was their only option. So over the next 6 years, I used 2 proven techniques that helped me teach robotics to those students who are learning. And the period of learning can last a few years. The very first assignment is always the infamous paper towel activity. Students are paired, given 3 standard sheets of newspaper, 1 piece of Scotch tape the length of their arm, no matter how small they are, and 10 to 20 minutes, depending on age, to make the tallest paper tower in class. And this tower has to stand on its own for at least 10 seconds. This one activity tells me everything I need to know about a student. Within the first 10 minutes, I can tell who's competitive, who doesn't like to think too hard, who's bossy, who takes the lead, who's efficient and who isn't, who gives up quickly, who simply watches or waits for others to figure out what's going on and then copy what they've seen, who gets frustrated quickly, who thinks the best on their feet, and on and on. It is such a telling activity that to this day, I often invite parents to watch in order to discover various characteristics about their children. And believe me, they always get a kick out of it. So all you managers and team leaders in the audience, feel free to invite me to implement this paper tower in your office because you'll be surprised at what you learn. Now, armed with this information, I have each student in the palm of my hand. With it, I know exactly how to motivate each one of them. I can tell when they need that last few seconds of game encouragement speech or a simple hint, and when they appreciate both. I'm also aware of how much I can expect them to do, knowing that students only have a few minutes of work left in them before they're so frustrated they're ready to give up. And then I can gently push them on in the right direction until it gets hard to get them to stop working. I then use Embodied Cognition. This enables students to become the design of the robot, and the program that makes it work. Doing so helps them to determine what's needed to accomplish a task, and for whatever reason, we always end up having a great time. When this is done, I usually pick one student to be the anticipated robot or design or program, and the others work together to determine and give commands to make the robot do its intended task. If we have enough time at the end of the talk, I can demonstrate it. These two techniques have been extremely valuable. Using them made me realize that learning to design, build, and program robots really isn't hard. Students can do it at any age. You just have to spend time helping them get over their discomforts and their self-limiting beliefs. This usually means that you have to stay 1 and sometimes 2 steps ahead of them, emotionally, psychologically, and intellectually. You have to help them strengthen their self-confidence and ensure that they know they have a right at the table designing and building robots that they can imagine. Some of my colleagues describe what I do as speaking kid. Whatever you call it, it works. This, along with keeping those 700 plus pieces organized, staying open to new possibilities, teamwork, communication, and being extremely creative are all keys to teaching and learning robotics, especially with Lego Mindstorm kids. How do I know? I know because over the past 6 years, I've taught more than 200 students between the ages of 3 and 73 about the art of building and programming robots. These students come from approximately 6 schools in DC, within Uplift's own programs and lab spaces, and during expos and partnerships with other organizations around the city. Under this guidance, several of my students have formed competition teams and have competed in the U.S. First Lego League competitions, with 2 of them winning at the regional level. One, you can clap, yes. One, this team right here just won in this past November, winning the research portion of the competition, and the other team winning overall. They got recognized for having the best robot design and the best robot performance. Winning these recognitions won this team a spot at U.S. First Lego League state competition in Virginia. Students on my very first team back at KIPP DC AIM Academy have since graduated from high school and are now majoring in engineering, computer science, and mathematics as a result of their Saturday school experience. They and others like them are why I love this work. The thrill of meeting that robot a student designed and built for the first time, and sometimes even meeting themselves for the first time, is why Uplift continues to push the envelope when it comes to teaching and learning in robotics and STEM education overall. I've come to realize that most often it's not just teaching and learning robots, it's a lot more. We have fun and our students become enabled global citizens of the generation that pushes society forward. So speaking of pushing the envelope, here's that invitation. This fall, Uplift will embark on designing and building robots from scratch. If you'd like to be a part of this experience, learn how to speak kid, and see how the magic happens, please text your name and address to your name and email address to 202-713-5027. This number is on the screen along with my contact information. Thank you for your interest in my talk today. Enjoy the rest of your creative morning.